This is Bumper to Bumper, the car show. Drive in anxious and cruise out confident. With the best automotive information for your vehicle. And now your hosts, Matt Allen and Dave Riccio.
Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Bumper Radio. I am Dave Riccio, and Matt Allen is off for the weekend. He's out with his peer group, learning more about being an automotive shop owner. So today I am your KTAR car guy. Bumper to Bumper Radio is heard every Saturday from 11 to noon. And at Bumper to Bumper Radio, we're helping you, the motoring public, have a better overall car experience. So if you got car questions, we've got car answers. So we encourage you to give us a call at 602-277-5827, 602-277-KTAR. You can also text us at 411-923, and I'm still saying we because I've got John in studio with me. John is our lead technician at Tri-City Transmission and Auto Repair. Hey, John, welcome to the show.
Morning, Dave.
Thanks for showing up to help our listeners with their car.
You bet.
And, you know, today on the Bumper to Bumper Roadmap, we're going to have a fact or fiction for you. Of course, we're taking your phone calls and your text, and we're going to be talking about transmissions. And I asked John when we walked in, I said, you're at a Sunday barbecue. People find out you're in the transmission business. What is the first question that they're going to ask you? Every time you go to a barbecue, what's the first question out of their mouth?
When should I have my transmission service?
So that is the same question I get every time I go, well, I haven't. It's got 150,000 miles on it. I haven't serviced it yet. Should I service my transmission? So over and over again, and it actually is an FAQ, frequently asked question on this show. I think it happens probably every week or every other week. Someone calls in with that question. And there's so much information in regard to transmission services. Some of it's good, most of it's bad, and so plenty of people that are there with free advice. Sometimes free advice is worth about what you pay for it.
Yeah, exactly.
Nothing.
Yeah.
So unless they're actively have their hands on the inside of a transmission and they're diagnosing a transmission and that's what they do, they may not be qualified to give you advice about a transmission service. So I put my hands in transmissions weekly. John puts his hands in transmissions weekly, and we're often diagnosing transmission problems. So we can talk about anything today on the show. If it's related to transmission, great. If it's not, doesn't have to be. John's got 40 years of experience in auto repair with the specialty in transmissions as well. So we can handle any of that, but that's our qualification in telling you about transmission service. John, what is the first thing that comes to mind when the topic of transmission service comes up for you?
What do you mean? What's the first thing that comes to mind?
Yeah, I mean, if you just wrote without unfiltered, what comes up for you?
People using the wrong fluids, you know, how difficult it is to actually do the job right, especially on the late models and stuff, you know, without a scanner and without the right tools to fill it, trying to push fluid upwards to get it into the transmission from the bottom because it's got a standpipe instead of a filler. Transmission services are kind of a pain.
They're a pain. They're not easy, and so, you know, if any of you are at home have looked under your hood lately and you have a car that's built in the last 10 years, chances are you're not going to find a dipstick for the transmission.
Yeah.
John, why is there no dipstick for the transmission?
Keep people from putting the wrong fluid in the transmission.
Yes, and not only that, it actually eliminates about half of our industry that can actually service a transmission.
Yeah,
I mean at least half.
Yeah,
because you gotta know how to do it. And for my guys, we do probably 15 services a week, day in and day out. We're setting fluid levels. That's just services, not including transmissions that we had out and repaired and had to set the fluid level right on. But because they don't have this dipstick, a lot of people that don't want to mess with them because you said they're a pain to deal with, right?
Yeah.
And so for a lot of people that are a pain to deal with, they just don't recommend things that they don't want to do. You know? So if you got to pick what you got to do that day, at work, you're like, I don't want to do transmission services.
Or they've done the workaround and they're using the flushing machines, so they don't have to pull pans off or anything like that.
Even the word flush means so many different things to so many different people. And you brought up the flush machine. And the flush machine, I think, was invented by the oil company, because they want to sell fluid, and you're in the business of selling fluid. And so how are you going to push more fluid? Well, it's going to be more services.
Sure.
So now there's people that don't want to do services. There's no dipstick. It's complicated to fill them up. How do we alleviate that? Well, we'll create this flush machine. It sounds good. It sounds very thorough, and it sounds effective.
Easy to hook up. You push the button and walk away from it,
And the scary thing about your flush machine is you can't sit there. If you have a Toyota in your bay and you do transmission service, the next car you pull in is a Chrysler, and the next car you pull in is an Audi, you have to put 3 different fluids in that machine. You can't swap them back.
You can't cross-contaminate it like that. No.
So it doesn't work that way. So if a business has a flush machine, how are they handling the fact that every vehicle, there's not a vehicle out there anymore that uses that basic Dexron 3 that was the standard for decades. I'm trying to think of
old stuff.
Old stuff. I mean, right around the year 2000. So if your car is newer than model year 2000, chances are it has a specific fluid in a specific intent.
Yeah.
So I would say this, and I think I could say this with confidence, that a bad transmission service is way worse than no transmission service at all.
Yep.
So that'd be like number one. So if you're out there listening, you're wondering, should I service my car? Shouldn't I service my transmission? Do I, don't I? Well, there it is right there. A bad transmission service is worse than no service at all.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it gets a little more complicated. How do you know what a bad transmission service is? You know, but as hard as it is to get the fluid level right, and to have the skill. And I'm sometimes diagnosing and fixing cars that just came out of a very qualified auto repair shop who did a transmission service, but they were off by half a quart. And a half a quart is enough to screw up the shift adapts, to make the transmission not work right, to make you think your transmission's going bad. So, I mean, good qualified technicians working out, but because, you know, he does one transmission service in a day where we're doing, you know, I may have a technician do 3 or 4.
Yeah.
You know, so it's something that we're...
And the problem with a bad transmission service is you may not know you got a bad transmission service for a year and a half.
Well, this is what happens is that we're doing rebuilding a transmission for somebody. The one that comes to mind for me is a 4L80 that we did not too long ago, and the transmission's out and it's on the transmission bench, and I go over there and I ask Christian, I say, hey, what happened to this transmission? And he goes, they put 2 O-rings on the filter.
Whoops.
So, you know, the problem didn't show up for about a year before it was an issue.
Sure.
But what happens is the filter shows up in the box and it's got a new O-ring on it or a new seal on it. And if the guy doesn't actually take the time to take the old seal out because he's kind of young and maybe inexperienced about changing filters out, he rams that thing up in there and thinks it's great. Yeah. Well, now you got a little bit of cavitation in the pump, a little place where you can draw air into the pump, and so the transmission's not going to work right. And it may not fail today or tomorrow or the next day, but eventually it will fail as a result of those things. So that's a transmission service gone wrong, or the CVTs we're talking about, John. CVTs are super. This is most of your modern little lightweight cars like a Nissan Altima, some of the Nissan Sentras are CVTs. A lot of these Jeeps.
Yeah, Dodge Calibers. Yeah, they're all over the place now. Everybody's got a CVT. Some of the Volkswagens.
If that transmission fluid is off by half a quart to a quart, and that may sound like a lot, but when you're talking about a 10-quart window, it becomes insignificant. I mean, it would feel like it would be insignificant, but it is a big deal.
No, that's a big deal.
To be a half a quart off. So those are some of the concerns we have about flushes. There's no dipsticks there. You know, the late model cars are different. You have to have a scan tool physically to do a late model car right, to set the fluid level right.
Yeah.
We were doing a BMW this week, and there literally is, you have to set the oil life of the fluid that you just put in the transmission, and there's certain steps you have to follow to do it right. And that's not just going to happen at XYZ Quickie Lube.
Yeah.
So that's where I get nervous about transmission service. So people ask me that question at the barbecue, and my answer is yes, you should service your transmission, but I have a little asterisk right there that says make sure you get it done right. And it's going to be hard as the public to really know, when am I getting a good transmission service right. I think some of the pull-through stuff, you know, I worked at a car wash in high school, and I changed engine oil.
Yeah.
We did transmission services, and we did radiator services and everything like that. Back then, I didn't know what I didn't know.
Right, sure.
But now here I am, 20, 25 years later, and I'm like, ooh, we did that wrong, and ooh, we did that wrong. So I think when it comes to the investment of a transmission is that you want to make sure you really got a qualified shop that's doing your transmission. In one that came up, John, the other day, it was a transmission that was at another shop, and the other shop did some work on it, and then they were going to recommend this lady a transmission in her Corvette. And so they were going to $6,500 is the quote she approved.
Ouch. Yep.
And thank goodness the shop owner said, I'm not quite sure about our diagnosis on this thing, Dave. I want to bring it over to you for you to take a look at it. So the vehicle came over to my shop, and what the problem was the shift adaptations were not correct.
Right.
And where shift adaptations come up for me is your car is this learning machine. It's learning your driving habits. It's learning the amount of wear in the transmission. It's learning the amount of wear in the engine and all these other things, and it's compensating.
Right.
Okay? So these shift adapts or these adaptations, there's a keep alive memory that has to have a good battery. Okay, in the car, in order for this memory to happen. And you may have a battery that starts the car and goes vroom, vroom, vroom every time you start it up, and that's fine. But if it's weak, what happens is when you go to crank it, if it drops below 9 volts, you know, you start to lose some of that memory that's in the system. And so you don't want to, if you got a battery that's 2.5 years old, you're starting to get ready to buy another battery again. So when it comes to batteries, you want to buy a good battery. At our shop, we use Interstate batteries because there is a difference in batteries. People think they're all the same. They're all just a brick with lead in them, that kind of thing. But, John, you're talking about some of the batteries you pull out of the car. They're heavy.
Yeah.
And then some of the batteries you pull out of the cars are light, but they're the same size as the other one you just pulled out that was heavy. Well, someone cheated the lead or something in there.
Exactly.
It wasn't built properly, because they wanted to keep the price point down. Maybe it was a battery from Acme Auto Parts or whatever have you. So when it comes to batteries, because it can affect your transmission that could cost $6,500 in this particular case, you don't want to, save $10 and lose some money. So Interstate batteries is what we use in our shop. Yeah. When we come back, we've got wide open lines at 602-277-5827, 602-277-KTAR. If it's related to your transmission, great, we love that. If it's related to anything else on the car, we love that too. John's got 40 years experience on everything on the vehicle, and I've got about 20, but between the two of us, we're going to get you a good answer. We'll be right back.
There's nothing more important than family. Hi, Kurt Rock for Kurt's Auto Repair. Family owned and operated and bumper-to-bumper radio preferred. We've been taking care of Valley families and their auto care needs with a perfect Better Business record for over 27 years. Come experience the difference our ASE Master Techs can make for you and your family at Kurt's Auto Repair. Just east of I-17 at 22nd Avenue and Bell Road, or online at mycarhurts.com. Gas or diesel, foreign or domestic. If your car hurts, take it to Kurt's.
They're going to go nuts when he hits this thing.
Oh, he went in.
The Waste Management Phoenix Open, presented by the Auction Indian Community, January 29th to February 4th. Get your tickets today at WMPhoenixOpen.com.
Well, welcome back to Bumper to Bumper Radio. I am Dave Riccio. Matt Allen is off today, so I've brought in John Riggle from Tri-City Transmission Auto Repair to help you with your car. Today we're talking about transmission service. That's a topic for today. We can really talk about anything in relation to your car, whether you got a weird vibration or you got a weird noise or your gas mileage has plummeted and you think there's something wrong with your car. Maybe the check engine light comes on and you're like, do I worry about it? Don't I worry about it? We can talk about any of that at 602-277-5827, 602-277-KTAR. And some phone calls are starting to roll in. And John, transmission service, some of the keys as Bree gets these phone calls screened. I want to hit it, bad service is worse than no service at all. So if you're on the fence about it and you think you're going to get a bad one, don't bother.
Yeah.
spend your money somewhere else, okay? Certainly servicing your transmission will help the life of it. Some of the transmissions, the BMW that we serviced yesterday, Chris is in here in studio with us, and he did a service on a BMW yesterday that, it had the green sticker on the pan that said lifetime fill.
Yep.
Okay. ZF is who manufactures that transmission, and if you were to talk to them, they would say, no, it's not lifetime fill. But if BMW wants to present it that way, that's up to BMW.
Yeah.
So it's not lifetime fill. But we're seeing so many failures in valve bodies and solenoids, not necessarily the rest of the transmission, but in those pieces right there, and I think it's a result. I know it's a result of fluid being bad. So when the fluid, what happens is it gets dissolved particulates in it that are stratified in the fluid, and then that's in all the valves. And it, before the show, I was saying to Chris, he said it's like exfoliating your valves.
Sure.
So a little exfoliation going on in the inside of your transmission. So it's not so much that the oil itself is, it does break down with heat and wear and all that stuff, but it gets all this dissolved solids in there. And then these electronic solenoids are just switch valves that the computer turns on and off to make your transmission do different things. And they're just little copper coils, and they're energized with power, and to me they make like little magnets.
Yeah, and we've got all of these precision clearances in the valve bodies and stuff. And the one thing that we've done with the late model transmissions is we modulate all those valves now. All those valves shuttle back and forth real quickly, and that if you've got any kind of abrasive at all in those bores where those valves are, you just generate wear, and in some cases you get the valves to stick.
So the moral of the story is service your transmission, but the other moral is don't get a transmission service if it's a bad one. It's just not worth it. So you want to make sure you're dealing with someone who does regularly practice doing transmission service. So, all right, we're going to go with Dan in Gilbert, and if I can get the phones working, Matt usually works the button, so let's see. Hey, Dan, you're on Bumper to Bumper Radio. How can we help you? Hey, Dan? Dan, are you there? Let me see. Maybe I hit the wrong button. Nope. Put you back on hold. We're going to try Derek in Phoenix. Looks like he's got a 2010 Ford F150. How can we help you, Derek? You're on Bumper to Bumper Radio. Hey, Derek, are you with us?
Yes, sir.
How can we help you on your 2010 F150?
Yeah, so it's actually a transmission question. That's why I wanted to call today. So when I'm going, like, on the freeway or going up the large hills, saying going out of Phoenix and whatnot, if I get into the passing gear, like, really get on the accelerator, it does like a hard slam, and then it, keeps going. But it's like it feels almost like a pretty hard, slam into that high gear to get into the faster gear.
Would this be like on really steep grades, like you're driving up to Payson and it's one of the six degree grades, or is this more mild grades?
It's on a mild grade. I mean, it has happened to me in the past on like a flat, just passing lane, but mostly on the hills. Yeah.
How many miles are on your Ford?
Right now it's got 139,000.
Okay.
But this has actually been happening since it had about 84,000.
Okay. It's kind of putting me in the direction of, and this is a bit of a wag, John, but if you think about all the F-150s that we fix where they have issues, and it starts at about 80 to 90,000 miles, and it's when they got to give it a little more gas because they're going up a hill or they're going to pass somebody, and what's not running right?
Yeah, it's a misfire usually. Yeah, and they can cause all kinds of strange problems when they misfire.
So one of the things we do, like F-150 happens to be a pattern failure that we see on a regular basis. But what ends up happening, and you don't realize it because you've been driving that truck since it was brand new, but the power in that truck is really deteriorated and it's kind of fallen off. So the engine's not running as good as it used to. And you start to have, when you're cruising down the road, what happens is the computers, once you're in cruise, it's backed out all the fuel, so it's making the truck run as lean and efficient as possible. But when you start to have these lean misfires, then you start to have issues. So what happens if the motor's not working right, the transmission can't work right.
Well, yeah, and we've had, especially with the 6-speeds on the Fords, remember the 6-speeds, and you have a misfire, well, the misfire goes back and electrocutes the data bus temporarily, and the trans doesn't know what to do. We've had them bang shifts. I've had them shift from 4th gear down to 1st gear, do all kinds of nasty stuff when they do that. And they'll hit really, really hard. That's the first thing I would consider. Yeah, and they won't necessarily turn on the check engine light either.
Exactly. So that's how complicated it is to diagnose these things. I'm calling people up and they swear they got a transmission problem, and I'm selling them spark plugs. But weird stuff happens when the resistance goes high on the spark plugs and that type of thing.
But it's tough to guess at with one like that too, because you're talking about a situation where it only does it when it's under a load too.
Yes.
So that makes it tough. It's not easy to necessarily figure out what's wrong with it.
In some of these, and people, they can be, they're like, hey, do you got my car figured out just yet? Well, hold on a second. We're driving at different times, and you got an intermittent issue, and it's really a harder one to find. I mean, I can just sell you a transmission, but you may not want that if that's not what you need.
We had one the other day where the guy needed the trailer hooked up behind it. We had to have him bring the trailer down so I could take it out and drive it and see what it did, and I had to drive the thing with the trailer. And it finally acted up.
So it is, auto repair is not as clear cut always. But those are some of the things that we go through to diagnose these things. So, Derek, my initial gut is I don't think you have a transmission problem per se. It may be a transmission symptom, but it may not be as related to the transmission itself. So that needs to be diagnosed. It's not going to be maybe a senior technician that can look into that kind of stuff. And these things, I've got Chris and John and myself here. I don't know how many times we are working together. We did it 2 times this week where we got a grease board in the back office. We write out all the details and we sit around it and we figure this car out because they're not always clear cut and simple. And so sometimes it's even more than one guy. And so that's where how many cars are we fixing with scanners and with other things that aren't transmission related?
Lots. Yeah.
All the time.
25-30% anyway.
And it used to be that we could get away with, in the transmission business, you just had to be a transmission guy. You just had to be able to work with that. But we can't do that anymore because we have to know the rest of the vehicle in order to know what's going on. So, and then the other thing too, and we talked about batteries. We talked about bad batteries causing issues earlier.
Oh yeah.
And then the other thing that comes up is that if you're one of these people that every time you go to the auto shop, let's say you've got a good, trustworthy auto shop, and they recommend things that you really do need. And every time they recommend something, you go, nah. What ends up happening when you have a vehicle that has a bunch of deferred maintenance, you end up with all kinds of problems. And they're weird problems. They're the kind of problems that aren't like so easy to find because it's cumulative wear. So it's a little here, a little there, a little there, a little there, and all of a sudden you have this weird anomaly of a problem, but it's not one thing. It's 10 other things, that come up that cause these problems. So, I mean, auto repair is, and that's the whole point of this show is that we want to have you be in the know. So when you are at the auto shop, you're like, okay, that makes sense, or that sounds right, or I've heard the guys on the radio talking about that. That's something that's going to come up, and not something that I technically want to ignore, but something I do want to take care of. And really the best way to keep track of that, John, we talk about it even at the shop. You're like, Dave, do we have a budget to fix the coolers every year? No, we don't. Okay, we got to put a budget together.
Yeah.
As long as we plan for it, it's not such a surprise, but it's something we know we got to do. So when it comes to auto repair, you want to make sure that you have a budget set up because it shouldn't be a shocker that your car is going to need some money.
It shouldn't be a shocker because your car is going to break. There's an entire industry out there built on the premise that your car is going to break.
For sure. We'll be right back. We got phone calls. Brent, Sean, Dan, and Linda. We'll be right back.
Having an accident is stressful. Dealing with a repair process shouldn't be. Hi, Leo Petrozella for Campus Body Salon. The right to choose a repair facility is yours, not the insurance company's. We work with all insurance companies, but we work for you. Campus Body Salon, bumper-to-bumper radio approved and independently family-owned and operated since 1973. Check out our Cash for Your Crash program where we pay you 10% off of your repair up to $1,000. Campus Body Salon, the best care in collision repair.
Hi, I'm Dave Riccio, owner of Tri-City Transmission. Well, you may have come to know us for being a transmission expert. What you may not know is that our customers regularly ask us why we don't perform repairs to the rest of the vehicle. You guys are so great. Why work on just the transmission? Well, the requests became hard to ignore, and 3 years ago, we began to build an infrastructure to perform general automotive repair. We weren't going to do general repair if we couldn't be great at it. So in 2013, we began the soft opening of Tri-City Auto Repair on Smith Road. We brought on ASE Master Technicians to work side by side with our Master Transmission Technicians. The combination of the best in both of these trades has created a synergy that allows us not only to fix your transmission, but to service and repair your whole car, and to do it well. Let's face it, the modern car has become so integrated. We believe all of our expert knowledge puts us ahead of the curve. Find us at TricityTransmission.com or TempeAutoRepairShop.com. That's TempeAutoRepairShop.com.
It sounds like they've just had the accurate automotive experience. We're family-owned and operated and have served the Mesa, Tempe, Gilbert communities for over 22 years. We focus on building long-lasting relationships and, listening to you so that we can understand, meet, and exceed your expectations. One location, 14 bays, 88 years of automotive expertise, and a passionate commitment to customer service and excellence. My name is Lee Weatherby, and I approve this message because it's true. We love what we do, and we want to do it for you. Accurate Automotive, the home of friends serving friends.
KTAR-FM, Glendale, Phoenix. Arizona's breaking news and traffic. KTAR News on 92.3 FM. Arizona's news station. KTAR. On air, 92.3 FM. Online at KTAR.com. And streaming live on the KTAR News app. Your breaking news and traffic now.
It's 11:30. I'm Tom Perumian. Here's our top story. The death toll has now grown to 18 in this week's deadly mudslides in California. Rescuers now report that every home has been searched in the evacuated community of Montecito, but the search for the missing continues. Marcy Gonzalez with ABC News reports from Montecito.
Residents who are under mandatory evacuation orders here in Montecito are told they likely won't be allowed back for at least 2 weeks, but experts say that it could take months to clean all of this up.
Immigration hardline groups in the U.S. finding themselves in an uncomfortable position following President Donald Trump's use of a vulgar term describing African countries. The movement to limit the number of migrants to the U.S. has long faced criticism that it's a thinly veiled attempt to make the country whiter. Immigration foes insist that is not the case and have moved to distance themselves from the president, their most prominent supporter following his remarks. Now we get a check on traffic. Here's Mike Daniels in the KTAR Traffic Center.
Thank you, Tom. Valley Freeway is accident-free. We do have a crash in Avondale involving a motorcycle at Dysart at Indian School Road and a wreck in Scottsdale and Miller Road just south of McDowell. This report brought to you by RM3, exclusively from Red Mountain Weight Loss. Lose up to 20 pounds or more by this time next month on RM3. Go to redmountainweightloss.com today. I'm Mike Daniels, KTAR News.
Sunny and nice today, 77 our expected high. It'll be cloudy tomorrow, 77 also the high, then sunny and cooler, 74 on Monday. Overnights will dip down into the low 50s. Right now, 68 degrees in Fountain Hills. Weather brought to you by Howard Air. I'm Tom Perumian on Arizona's news station, KTAR News.
Do you need some work done on your home, or are you about to take on some do-it-yourselfing? Before you make any phone calls, before you pick up your toolbox, you need Rosie. Rosie on the House, every Arizona homeowner's best friend for the past 30 years. Saturday mornings beginning at 7 on KTAR News, 92.3 FM.
Trust. It's hard to earn and sometimes even harder to find. If you live or work in downtown Phoenix, Matt Allen's Virginia Auto Service is celebrating over 20 years of award-winning service at the corner of 7th Street and Virginia. Recognized as one of the best service shops in the country, their customers have come to trust Virginia Auto Service for its A+ rating by the BBB, 2-year 24,000-mile warranties, and free transportation to and from your home or office. 20+ years of earning your trust. Virginia Auto Service. They're serious about service.
Matt and I share car repair tips weekly to help you keep your car safely on the road, and a few of them are easy to do.
Yep, you're right, Dave, and one of the easiest is to have a dependable battery that you can trust to get you started no matter what the conditions.
Interstate batteries are what we trust at Bumper to Bumper Radio. In fact, they're what we use at our own shops for our customers.
If you're like most people, your car is one of your most valuable investments. Make sure you take care of that investment with the power necessary to get you where you need to be. Interstate Batteries are America's #1 replacement brand with the factory fresh guarantee, and they're easy to find at good shops everywhere.
Cars or trucks, Interstate has you covered with long life and performance in our harsh desert climates with products like Megatron Plus. It carries a 30-month free replacement and a 6-year performance guarantee.
Interstate Batteries. No battery lasts longer. Check them out at interstatebatteries.com.
Who can you trust here in the Valley to repair your ride? This is Bumper to Bumper Radio, KTAR News on 92.3 FM.
Well, welcome back to Bumper Radio. I am Dave Riccio. Matt Allen is out, so we've got John Riggle, lead technician at Tri-City Transmission and Auto Repair, in here to help you with your car. We've got Linda, John, Brent, Sean, and Dan lined up, so we got some phone calls that we got to get to. We're going to go with, looks like Brent in Chandler. He's got a 2012 F150. And you don't have to drive an F-150 to call today. You can drive any kind of car, right? Hey, Brent, you're on Bumper to Bumper Radio. How can we help you?
Hey, guys. I appreciate taking the call. So 2012 F-150, the dealer's recommending transmission service fluid replacement. It's got just shy of 83,000 miles on it. So the question is it, I'm going to check the manual, but is it time to really consider that? And then the second part of the question is, and I'm glad you talked about budgets. What's a good budget range for me to consider when having that done, and the recommendation of having a good service done? So what's the budget?
Those are really great questions.
Yeah.
John, what do you think? 80,000 miles, 2012 F-150. Would you be considering doing a service on it? Is it a good idea?
Depends on what you're going to do with the car. If you're going to sell the car at 90,000 miles, you probably don't need to. Okay.
That's a good point that comes up on other shows, is that people want to buy these cars, and we tell them to, if they want to buy a $10,000 car, we tell them to figure $12,000 because they got to catch up all the maintenance that the prior guy didn't do.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway.
And the other point about the service is, if you wait too long, the damage is already done. The service doesn't do you any good. So 80,000 miles, I have no problem doing the service at that point. That's a good place to do it.
So that question, and now that's one I think is going to have the integrated pan and filter, or it's more of a 6-speed type 2012. I'm drawing a blank.
It could go either way.
What model on it? But a good transmission service, in my mind, is going to cost somewhere between $200 and $300.
Yep.
At least.
Yeah.
Now, you want to. I mean, at the dealer, chances are they're going to be using Ford fluid. Not always. Not all dealers do, but most cases. Yeah. I think it's Mercon LV anymore. Some of them take Mercon 5. There's 3, 4, 5 different Ford fluids that go in transmissions. Right. But yes, I would say definitely do it. You're going to spend $200 to $300. You could spend $350 if there was some unusual circumstance, something like that. But definitely worth doing. So thanks for the call. 602-277-5827. We're going to go with Sean in Chandler. He's got a 2014 Hyundai Odyssey. How can we help you, Sean? You're on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking my call. So it's kind of a general question, and I guess it's transmission related. I'm asking more so about my wife's car, the Odyssey. I also have a Nissan Altima that essentially does the same thing, but we have a pretty heavily sloped driveway. We both back in and park. I've always been taught to do that. Now, when we say we just back in, put it in park, set the parking brake, and leave it, whenever we hop back into our cars, release the parking brake and put it in drive, we get the knock, like there was pressure on the transmission or whatever. I'm not an expert. Yep. What I've done to kind of alleviate that, and I'm trying to train my wife to do the same thing, is, when we back in, I tell her to keep her foot on the brake, put it in neutral, set the parking brake, then release the brake, then put it in park. And that seems to alleviate the knock. My question is, A, is that the right thing to do? Is there a better way? And B, what could result in not, getting rid of that knock? Can we be doing damage to the transmission?
Okay, I think you can help on that one, John. What do you think?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's no problem with putting the thing into neutral, setting the emergency brake, and then put it into park.
Okay,
that's the correct order. You take the load off the transmission, you set the emergency brake, there's no load on the parking pole, then you put it into park. Now you're all set and ready to go. The next time you get in and move it into drive, you should be good to go. Release the parking brake after you put it into drive.
Put it in drive, then release
don't get in, release the parking brake, and then put it in drive, because then you just loaded it back up. So you leave the parking brake on, put it into drive, and you should alleviate that issue with it kind of hanging up on the parking pole.
And the thing with I shouldn't say never. It's not every day that we see parking poles ripped out of cars. We don't see that, but we do see is bad shift cables, bad shift linkage, all the things that go between that shifter in the car and the transmission down below. And if, when you pull it, when it's resting on the parking pole, the full weight of the vehicle, you got to yank on that shifter. Yep. And eventually, over the course of 10 years, that thing's going to be worn out. It's just going to be another $200 repair that you didn't have to buy. So that's a great question. I think anyone listening could benefit from that answer. So we're going to go with Linda in Phoenix. She's got a 2000 Dodge 1500. How can we help you, Linda? You're on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Thank you so much for taking my call. My Dodge truck is four-wheel drive. It has automatic, and it has about 164,000 miles on it. The tranny was replaced at about 150,000 miles, but I'm having an intermittent problem with taking my vehicle out of park and into drive or reverse. the shifter on the column is absolutely locked up. I've had to have it taken to the dealership 2 times because you can't move it. You can't take it out of gear once it's in park. Is that a transmission problem?
You know, it's maybe twofold, and maybe I ask you a little bit more. So in the probably around mid-'90s, they started doing a park brake interlock safety feature. So if your foot is not on the brake, the shifter will not come out of park. And what that's designed for is if your car was running and it was in idle and you stepped out and your kid was in the car and he knocked the shift lever, it wouldn't go into gear and the car wouldn't run off on its own.
Yeah.
So that's a safety feature that was designed. Those often, there's a solenoid that's in the steering column, and then there's a switch on the brake pedal. And then there's the computer plays a part in there somehow. But those frequently, I shouldn't say frequently, but it's not unoften that we're fixing 1 or 2 of those a month in our shop.
Yeah, this is also one that wears a rooster cone inside the transmission. These will hang up the linkage inside the transmission on these, and you have to make that distinction. And that's something that's relatively easy for a technician to do. Mm-hmm. You disconnect the linkage at the transmission, see if the lever at the top end moves easily now. Now you've done the divide and conquer. You've split the system into 2. You can decide whether it's a linkage or electronic control problem or whether it's actually inside the transmission. But that's something a technician needs to do that because it's kind of dangerous. You don't want the vehicle
car to roll away.
Yeah.
Roll over the top of you. So that's a good point. So there actually is, on the diesels, I see that happen the most, where the ball and rooster comb, and that's back to the prior phone call with, the parking pole and how all that works. All that stuff does affect, that rooster comb. So that's an excellent phone call. Hopefully that helps you out, Linda. 602-277-5827. We're going to go with Vincent. He's got a 2004 Cadillac Escalade. How can we help you, Vincent? You're on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Yes, sir. Thank you for taking the time to talk to me about this. This is actually not a transmission question. I hope that's okay with you.
You're gonna have to call back next week. I'm sorry, sir. No, it's fine. What do you got?
My Escalade. I keep up with this car so well, but lately I'm having this light come up, and it's the only thing that is on my dashboard. It says service stability system. I took the car to the dealership, and they called me back after they looked at it and said that it needs $4,300 to fix. The number didn't sound too good for me. I thought something was not right about that number. I just wanted to check with you guys. Do you have any idea what this entails, like service stability system? What is that for?
Did they tell you what was wrong? I mean, is $4,300?
No, the only thing he said is that, I know what's wrong with it. For us to fix it is going to cost about $4,300.
Okay.
I said, no, I'm not going to do that.
No symptoms
affecting anything in the car at all.
Okay. Everything works okay.
Yeah, everything is. The car is running just as well as it always did. I just don't like seeing that message and the information. It's just screen.
Okay. Well, for me, I think sometimes, and I get this. People go to the auto repair shop and they have an issue. Let's say, the issue, and this is one thing we talk about in our shop oftentimes. People come in with one concern, and we see 10 other things that are wrong, and we can tend to talk to you about everything that we see, and so the person will take that first problem that they originally went in for and then attach all the other dollar figures.
Sure.
Because I think sometimes, John, when on the phone with customers, they hear, want, $1,700. That's all they hear.
Yeah.
So that's what they're hearing. So I'm not sure how much of this is going on, but maybe, John, you can talk a little bit about vehicle stability control and those lights and what those mean.
Yeah, that's basically traction control, stability control, ABS are all kind of integrated together. And without... I can guess, but I'm a terrible guesser. I'm really good at figuring out what's wrong with cars. But guessing on this one, there's so many possibilities for that one. Anything from wheel speed sensors to an ABS analog brake controller. Could be anything there. I don't know how much testing was done. I don't know if they threw a dart. There are some pattern failures on these things. The ABS, the HCUs go bad. That sounds a little steep for that, but there may be other issues too. That's something, really would have to get into it and diagnose it. And they can be intermittent as crazy. So that's something that, even if I knew what the codes were, I could narrow it down a little bit. But there's a lot of possibilities on that one.
For you, Vincent, there's a couple ways you can handle that. You can go back to the dealership or wherever you went to, maybe have them better explain it to you, and then marinate on that. It doesn't mean you got to get it fixed. I mean, that's what and then if you're not comfortable with it still, because
there's nothing wrong getting second opinion.
Yeah, get a second opinion.
Especially when you're looking at a $4,500 bill or $4,300.
Absolutely. And then the thing is get a second opinion, from somebody who knows what they're doing. So, not all technicians and not all auto shops are created alike. You want to work with a shop that has a senior technician that has some experience and knows what they're doing. There is no substitute for experience. I mean, someone can come out of school and know everything, but until you've made mistakes and done things wrong and done things right and have a book, a brain that can tell you all those things, really, really, really helps. So,
sometimes you don't know how it works till you break it.
That's true. So anyway, thanks, Vincent, for the call. Hopefully they help you out. If you're looking for a shop that can give you a second opinion, this is not only a radio show. There's a network of shops that you find at bumper2bumperradio.com. Any one of those shops should be able to point you in the right direction or help you out with that situation. So a little more information for that. We got a little bit of time here, John. I want to quickly do fact or fiction. My fact or fiction for the day, and I'm asking you if this is fact or fiction. Battery hold downs aren't needed.
No, that's fiction. We see it all day long. Cars roll in. We test every battery on every car that runs through the front door, and I see it day in, day out. Cars get a brand new battery, and the hold down is missing. For some reason, I don't know where hold downs go, but they go someplace, and they're just gone.
Yeah, there's a place in the universe where they're all stored.
Yeah, and that hold down is really important to that battery. Not just to keep it from falling over and doing something horrible, spilling acid everywhere, but as those batteries aren't held down, they vibrate, and when they vibrate, it can damage the lead plates and the connections inside the battery. It's really, really tough on them.
For sure. So if you're going to change a battery in your driveway, nothing wrong with it. Just do it right.
Yeah.
And that means put the battery hold down. And if it's the wrong battery and it doesn't fit right, go get the right battery.
Yeah, it's got to fit right. And bungee cards are not the right hold.
Those aren't certified?
No.
Okay. Anyhow, when we come back, we've got Robert and Gilbert. We've got Ken with the Saturn. We've got Dan and Steve, and one more coming through being screened. You listen to Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Having an accident is stressful. Dealing with the repair process shouldn't be. Hi, Leo Petrozella for Campus Body Salon. We've taken the stress out of collision repair since 1973, and here's a couple of tips to de-stress your repair. Make your own choice. Some insurance companies try to convince you that you must use their approved shop for your repair. Not true. Arizona state law allows you to choose the facility that's right for you. Beware of the cheapest estimate. Typically, it's the one from the insurance company cutting corners to trim costs or focusing on appearance only. At Campus Body Salon, appearance is important, but structural integrity and safety are even more critical. Campus Body Salon, independent, family-owned and operated, and bumper-to-bumper radio approved. Check out our Cash for Your Crash program, where we pay you 10% off of your repair up to $1,000. Campus Body Salon, the best care in collision repair.
Ouch! Being out of tune is no fun, and maybe even a little painful. Hi, this is Lee Weatherby, owner of Accurate Automotive in Mesa. At Accurate, we are a family-owned and operated one-stop automotive repair shop that specializes in building long-term relationships that are in tune with your needs, not ours. We've been recognized nationally as one of the top shops in the country, but for over 20 years, our priority has stayed focused on providing quality automotive service and repair at a fair price. I invite you to come in and see the difference an in-tune relationship can make for you and your car. With our free courtesy inspection, a $49 value, we feel it is well worth our investment in you because we believe good long-term relationships start early with your first walk through our doors. Accurate Automotive, home of friends serving friends, just off Broadway and Robson in Mesa since 1992. For more information, check us out online at accurateautomotiveaz.com today.
In this little studio here, we got like 4 different age groups, in each song that comes through, there's a different reaction from each person. This one touched Kerry's heart. I almost think I saw a tear develop in his eye. So anyway, welcome back to Bumper Radio. I'm Dave Riccio. Matt Allen from Virginia Auto Service is off, so I've got John Riggle from Tri-City Transmission and Auto Repair in to help you with the car. And John, we got 5 phone calls and we got about 6 minutes, so let's get to it.
Do it.
We're going to go with Ken. He's got a 2007 Saturn Ion. How can we help you, Ken? You're on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Hey, Dave and Don, thanks for taking my call. Hey, I have a Saturn Ion, and by the filler cap, my question is, by the filler cap, is there a cover, a black or whatever color cover, a plastic cover, covering like a 5-inch, 6-inch circumference hole on the transmission? The reason why I asked this question is I went and took it to a shop in town and had it worked on, and a day later I'm like, that don't look right. I've never been able to see the interior of my transmission. So I don't know if it fell off, popped off, or they took it off. So I just want to make sure. I put some duct tape over it to cover it so there's no dust and dirt getting in there. So I want to make sure that my transmission's not going to. Yeah. You know, I'm just saying that because I don't know if they were like, okay, futuristic work, let's take this cap off and he'll have to bring his vehicle in.
Right. Now, a couple things come to mind, and in a Saturn, I'm not sure exactly what transmission's in there, but I'll tell you something that happens at auto shops, and this isn't necessarily, our pride and joy, but there's all kinds of covers and plates and plastic and stuff like that, and they put it on there to make the engine look nice sometimes. Yeah. They put it underneath the car. It's actually pretty important for airflow, so there is a point to that stuff. But the first thing you got to do to get to work on the car is move that stuff out of the way. Yep. Some of it is pretty superficial. It's there for looks, doesn't really do much, and then some of it is super important, like some of those plates underneath the car. Sure. I find those to be important. So on occasion, if you just had the car worked on and you think something's missing, just go back there and ask them. Say, I feel like something's missing here. I don't know the car that well, but can you help me out? Am I missing something here? But it doesn't mean that someone intentionally left something off your car for future work. That kind of thing.
And if it is missing and they have it, they really want to get rid of it because they don't want that collection of parts laying around their shop anymore.
For sure. So there's extra parts are not a good thing that we pride ourselves on, but it doesn't usually. But in our shop, we actually have 3 technicians look at it before the car goes back to the customer, just to make sure that we're not missing anything. Because people aren't perfect, but you can make systems that help get you closer to perfect, and that's double checking, triple checking. So go back to the shop, just say, hey, I think something's missing here. Am I missing something? And if they blow you off and don't want to talk to you, then maybe you find yourself a different shop. But anyhow, so thanks for the call, Ken. We're going to go with Dan in Chandler. He's got a 2008 GMC Acadia. How can we help you, Dan? You're on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Hey, good morning. So I've had a little problem with my Acadia that's been ongoing, and I can reliably correct it pretty quickly, but I'm seeking a low-cost alternative to dropping the transmission, removing it from the engine, putting it on some form of jig, and fixing it. So
you can increase the insurance and put a for steel sign in the window, and that's probably the cheapest way you can fix that car.
I like that. Well, thank you very much.
Okay. What's going on with it?
Yeah. All right. So in the morning when I first roll it out of the garage, the engine light is not on. It usually warms up a few minutes just because of our behaviors in the morning, and then we'll drive down the street, and maybe 50% of the time there are reasons why it'll stay in first and possibly switch to second as we round the corner there, and then about 50% of the time the engine light will pop on, and if it's definitely that code says the transmission's asking it to turn the engine light on, and then if that occurs, when we pull out into the main street, it's going to shift into first, second, but it will not shift into third. If I pull over to the side of the street, turn the engine off, count to 10, turn it back on again, everything works just fine for the rest of the day. And I drive quite a bit in the course of the day. So I liked what you said earlier to another caller. There might be some kind of a particulate suspended in that fluid that's causing that solenoid to stutter. And that's the thing I forgot to tell you is I can also hear the solenoid stutter. Sometimes I can tell that it's trying to engage, but I don't know if that's if normally I'll just hear it go click if I can hear it at all, and it'll go into position. But otherwise,
I think this thing needs to be accurately diagnosed. Now, there's some people that don't know how to get into a transmission and actually fix it. They just say your transmission's bad. They set it off to the side. They pull your transmission out. They put it in a box. Out of that box, they took out a transmission that's already been rebuilt, and they stick it back up in the car.
Right.
And your car's fixed. And that's where it's different. That's where we try and do it different in our shop. You wouldn't necessarily replace an engine because you had a bad spark plug. You would just put a spark plug in it. Right. Okay. This particular transmission model is a 6T70, if I'm thinking right. And they do have some issues. They have the actual computer and the solenoids are inside the transmission. They call it a TECM, Transmission Hydraulic Electrical Control Module, if I get the acronym right.
Close enough.
But John, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it can go either way. That could be a wave plate failure. He mentioned a code that says that the transmission controller is telling the check engine light to come on, so he's probably scanning it with a generic tool, and he's probably getting a PO700. Odds are there are enhanced codes in the transmission controller that you would need a real scan tool to pull out. That's a first place to start. That way we can make the distinction. Is it a control side problem, or is it a mechanical problem like a wave plate or something?
For sure. Well, Dan, you're going to want to get into a good transmission shop to get it diagnosed. We're running low on time here. I've got Robert, I've got Frank, and I got Steve. I'm going to actually take you off air, so I appreciate hanging out on the line for us, and sorry we didn't get to you during the show. But thanks, guys, for Keegan. For running the dials, and Bree's helping out. We thank you for that, and thanks for joining us. If you're looking for a friendly, honest, competent shop, bumpertobumperradio.com.